right, let's go to this next one. Largest real-world analysis of ivermectin and mebendazole in cancer patients shows 84.4% clinical benefit. Nearly half report cancer disappearance or regression. Nearly half, folks. Cancer disappearance or regression. This is absolutely amazing. You got some beautiful stats with this. Tell us about this, please, Nick.
Yeah, this study is massive, absolutely massive. In fact, we did just publish, it is the single largest human study on ivermectin and mebendazole in real human cancer patients. So we had about 200 cancer patients. This was a collaboration between McCullough Foundation, the Wellness Company, and the chairman of the President's Cancer Panel, Dr. Harvey Risch. He was the senior author on this study. And so what we did was we looked, these 200 cancer patients, about 36% of them had active metastatic cancer. It was spreading. The rest had tumors, but it wasn't currently spreading. And they were all prescribed a compounded ivermectin mebendazole capsule. It's about 250 milligram ivermectin and 25 milligrams of mebendazole per capsule. And we did a survey, a patient survey, after 6 months of them taking these cancer patients. And what we found was absolutely shocking, where nearly half of these cancer patients taking the ivermectin and mebendazole reported either cancer disappearance or tumor regression. And then about 30% reported disease stability, so it wasn't spreading anymore. So that's a 84.4% clinical benefit ratio. In other words, 84.4% of those cancer patients did report to have benefited from the ivermectin and mebendazole. So this is absolutely huge. And so now what we need is large-scale randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials. This study should be the trigger point now for the government to start running those trials. We need to do them immediately. This is too large of a clinical benefit signal now to ignore. And it corroborates all of the preclinical experimental animal evidence we've seen over the past 20 years or so, where ivermectin and mebendazole exert over 12 distinct anti-cancer mechanisms across more than 12 cancer types. They expose rats with cancers to these. The tumors don't grow, or they shrink, or they disappear. And so it's very powerful. It targets cancer stem cells, specifically ivermectin. This is the source of some of these cancers that chemo doesn't get rid of. And so that's a very promising mechanism. But it also has been shown to, mebendazole has been shown to disrupt what's called microtubules in these cancer cells, so they can't divide anymore. This is all very, very promising research.
So, without naming the organization, because I don't want to pick on any particular organization, how many billions of dollars have been raised for cancer research? And yet, was it one of these prestigious cancer fighting institutions that came up with this, or who came up with this?
Who came up with ivermectin, or actually who came up with antiparasitics for cancer was actually in the 1950s. Soviet scientists did, and the CIA classified that information in the 1950s. They declassified that in 2011.
Now, why would they do that? Why would they do that?
Exactly. Why would they do that? Perhaps they didn't want, effective cancer treatments to be out there.
So is there a connection between big business and big government for making a very lucrative industry out of fighting cancer?
Yes. The chemo cartel wants to maintain the status quo of administering highly expensive and very long, drawn out, and barely effective treatments.
Do they also want depopulation?
It's possible, but
isn't the Kissinger report from the 70s about that? When I read it, I've got it in my library over here, talking about using food and such on third world, and fertilizers on third world countries to put in abortion laws, et cetera, et cetera. So How do we know this isn't about a money-making cartel, big government, big business, but also depopulation? How many millions have died from cancer in America and around the world since the 1950s?
Hundreds of millions have died. It's one of the
Worldwide.
leading causes of death now.
Worldwide, yep. So
Yeah,
you're saying
and-
they declassified what they knew were positive results using ivermectin to fight cancer. The CIA classified this in the 1950s.
Correct. It was a Soviet study. They exposed tumors to antiparasitics, and it shrunk some of the tumors and disrupted the cancer cells. And yeah, that was classified for some, very bad reason, probably, for nefarious reasons. But now the science is coming out. Now we're doing it. Now finally the human data is coming in. And yeah, it's looking like there is a large benefit signal to these. And
Okay, let's add in the mebendazole.
Mebendazole and ivermectin. So mebendazole actually appears to be more potent.
And who found this drug and what it would do? What year? Any idea how far back?
I know ivermectin it may have been in the 80s. I believe for ivermectin, it was some Japanese guy. He got some bacteria from a golf course and he isolated ivermectin from it. I believe, yeah, that's what I remember. Don't exactly quote me on that, but I believe that's how that was discovered. And yeah, it was like 30, 40 years ago. Mebendazole, I'm not sure how that was discovered. But
now, who's putting these together? Who came up with the idea of putting these together?
Well, this was actually done. Who prescribed these to the cancer patients was the wellness company.
Okay, bingo. That's where I was going. So you, Nick, and Dr. McCullough and Dr. Thorpe and some of the other folks listed on this study came up with the idea of fighting cancer by using these two drugs. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. So these cancer patients consulted with wellness company doctors, their telemedicine program, and cancer patients do have the right to try, and so
thanks to President Trump, right?
Yes. So they had the right to try, and they chose. I want to try these compounds that have extremely promising preclinical and anecdotal reports, and they tried it, and this is what they reported. They reported 32% of them with no evidence of disease.
But what I hear you saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, any of the large cancer research centers, they are not the ones that rolled this out and said, we're trying this, we're testing this with patients, right?
No, they're not.
So we have no evidence that any of the large cancer treatment organizations and labs, no evidence that you know of that any of them were trying this combination of drugs to fight cancer.
There may be one or two of clinical trials that are planned with these in a small subset of cancer patients, but no, the massive organizations, no, there hasn't been any to date that have been completed that should have been done decades ago. So no, they haven't done it. We're the first to do it here now with a large sample size.
What does that tell you about, in your opinion, what does that tell you about a lot of these large clinics?
Yeah, they don't care. They're in it for the money. They don't want any controversy. They just want to continue to administer chemo, rake in the cash. And that's that. They don't have to do any research. They don't have to do anything. They just inject doxorubicin into people. It's called the Red Devil, by the way, and it destroys the entire body. Maybe the cancer patients will live for a month or two longer. Sometimes it'll actually shorten their lifespan from the chemo.
How many people who get chemo?
Death.
Most people who get chemo and radiation, what is the survival rate?
I believe the survival time literally can only improve, but in most cases, I believe by a month or two.
That's exactly what I've read.
So so you're trading, a debilitating last months of your life for an extra month, I don't know if that's worth it. And so what's
And then the actual
happening,
people who have their cancer disappear after chemo, radiation, and these drugs, it's only like 10, 20% somewhere in there, right? Depending on the
it's
kind of
about-
cancer we're talking about.
Yeah, well, it is. Most of it is dependent on the cancer. Some specifically with surgery, that can result in remissions, and if it's just a single stage one, hasn't spread. But actually, sometimes they can spread it, though. By the way,
By cutting
even
into it, you
biopsy.
spread it.
Yeah, that can also spread it.
My wife tells the story all the time of a housekeeper that her family had that had a lump on her neck for 18 years, something like that. She was fine. Someone convinced her to go and get it removed, and she was dead within a few weeks after doing that.
Oof.
Because you're cutting into it and then it spreads. In other words, I hear and I read that some of these tumors are self-contained and people live 18, 20 plus years their whole life with that. But as soon as they cut into it, now you've dumped it into the bloodstream. Have you heard these reports too? I mean, that's a real life example that my wife's family personally knows.
Yes, no, that's very real. And so that can happen. Yeah, even with the biopsies, it doesn't even need to be a surgery or removal. Just taking a sample from it can release some of those cancer cells into the bloodstream to spread. And so, yeah, what we need is safe, cheap, and effective compounds, none of which is currently recommended by all the major cancer institutes. And so this, antiparasitics, appear to be the leading front runner in that domain.
And how many
But
people
there's
that
also
do
other
go
things.
through radiation or chemo end up with another kind of cancer?
Many. I don't know the exact number, but yes, it can lead to actually other cancers. And it's a system that clearly hasn't worked because, when we have millions upon millions of people dying from cancer every year, what we're doing is not working. It's not working. We got to stop it. We got to eliminate it in its tracks. And yeah, even if people are electing to take chemo, radiation, or surgery, the ivermectin and mebendazole, our study shown, was safe to take with it. Right, only 25% reported side effects with ivermectin mebendazole.
I mean, what kind of side effects would they be?
Very mild gastrointestinal, and sometimes some patients did report feeling a bit dizzy, particularly on high doses, taking 4 capsules a day. So it's gastrointestinal though was primary. None were serious, and some of those side effects may also have been due to concurrent chemo or radiation use as well, or some other supplements they were taking. But the safety profile was good. 93% of those who experienced these gastrointestinal side effects continued on the regimen, so it didn't stop them from taking it.
Okay, and if someone tonight is watching and they've got a diagnosis and they want to try this, how do they do that?
Well, you can go to thewellnesscompany.com and you can
Or
consult
worldviewhealthcare.com, which is our page connected to that. So we get some credit too on the network. Worldviewhealthcare.com and do what?
And you can go there, type in ivermectin mebendazole. There's actually a big page for it. I believe it's TWC/cancer or something along those lines. There's a big landing page explaining the whole study. And you can get connected with a licensed healthcare professional and have a consult to see if you do qualify for these repurposed cancer drugs.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay, what I'd love for you to do, and I'm sure you're going to track people coming there, ordering it, and then come back and report to us when you have new data on people that heard this program or read your article aside from us and said, I'm going to try that. Because that's going to happen, right?
Oh, it's going to happen. Yeah, it's making the rounds now. We released it during a time, though, when it's very hard to get traction, given the current situation, in the Middle East. But we released it. It's out. It's now undergoing peer review, and actually, we're working on a few case reports of complete remissions of cancers using these antiparasitics. One of them's a breast cancer. We have the scan from before and after, and yeah, I mean, you'll be shocked. So lots of studies coming up in the future, larger sample sizes, particularly. We'll have more than 200 cancer patients in the next one. And remember, these are clinical program evaluations, right? So it is a evaluation of, are these, how are these products doing? And it's very clear. The patients are reporting high success rates. They're very happy with it. And yeah, we're going to continue to do this with these larger sample sizes. And we hope that, there will be large randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials now from these results as the springboard, because it's very critical. Everybody knows somebody who's been affected by cancer, and we got to stop this. And this appears to be one way that we may be able to help stop it, at least in a subset of individuals.
Yeah. Wow. This is huge news because, again, the cancer is the number one killer, at least in the top 2 or 3, right?
Yes. Cancer death, it's actually, it's one of the, now in young adults, I believe colon cancers, one of the most common cancers. And so it's actually shifted since 2021 after the mRNA injections. Now more young people are getting cancers. Cancer deaths are skyrocketing since the mRNA shots. There's been about 130,000 excess cancer deaths in the U.S. since 2021. And so it's become a crisis now with these turbo cancers. So yeah, we got to dampen this fire.
Yeah, indeed we do. It's the article's over at thefocalpoints.com, thefocalpoints.com. And if you want to check out these 2 powerful drugs together and all that, the research and order it, because under your federal right to try, thanks to President Trump, I think it's an executive order he signed that allows for that, if I remember correctly. You can go to worldviewhealthcare.com to order these 2 powerful drugs together based on this great reporting. 32.8%, no current evidence of disease. 15.6% saw regression. Stable disease, 36.1%. Absolutely amazing. Worldviewhealthcare.com to read about it, thefocalpoints.com. All right, we look forward to more on this. We come back as the data comes in, as more people try these 2 powerful drugs together.
Yes, 100%. And in the next few weeks, we will have that groundbreaking case report of that complete remission. And we got to go through those scans. I'd love for you to see it and your audience to see it.
I'd love to do it. You let me know when you're ready.
Definitely.
Nick Holscher, check it in tonight. Thefocalpoints.com, thefocalpoints.com, the administrator of the McCullough Foundation. A great report. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, guys. Wow.